always, Mark. It's always an honor to hang out with you and spend this evening with you. And visit with you for dang sure. I really appreciate it. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
So weird. It's so fun though.
You know, with the turns, with those.
Of course. Thank you for having me on.
There's no reason for any of those people to put themselves and their bodies through that irreversible damage.
I'm like, all right, I'm just along for the ride.
Everyone, please support Mark. I love what you're doing.
How did this get here?
The importance of telling a story about human connection, I think right now is one of the most radical acts that we can be doing.
Other than that, it's all good. We're just going to keep trying to make it.
I walked 1,000 miles in the pouring rain, and I cursed the sky and told him to forget my name. Time you go to color show, and I'm waiting around this dusty town. I keep looking up, but I'm breaking down, and you come to me and I call you, and leave me and it falls through, and you tear me limb by limb. You're my favorite sin, gonna let me in.
Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Mark Sugiyama from Eclectic Arts Media, based here in Seattle, Washington. And thank you so much for joining me on this Tuesday, the 29th of November, 2022. And a few quick housekeeping details, as always, that I'd like to go through. First up, I want to thank Casey Hartnett for joining me last night from the hit horror film Terrifier 2. Casey was just a joy to talk to last night, and it looks like potentially she might be coming back for something that I will be talking about in a little bit later. And speaking of coming up, well, I guess I should talk about this now. The next live stream that I have scheduled is going to be something different. So if you're new to what I've been doing over the after the last year, because I have not been able to get one of these together. Back when the pandemic was really going full force back in 2020 and then into 2021, I was scheduling these things called fun table sessions, which is where I was bringing guests from different interviews that I'd done, and kind of really based on personality and interest, putting them together like kind of like a happy hour type of thing, where we're just kind of shooting the breeze. And sometimes they're really silly, sometimes they got a little serious. And I would try to do one of those again this year, but with in-person events for myself, people's schedules all over the place. I just couldn't get one together, but knock on wood, I have one confirmed for next Wednesday, which is December 7th at 6 p.m. Pacific. These things used to go really long. I have only asked my guests to commit to an hour. If it goes past that, then great. But again, things are very different than how they were last year, and definitely from 2 years ago. And if you'd like to know which guests are going to be coming, I have 3 scheduled, and there might be a 4th. Please follow me as Eclectic Arts Media, one word, on Instagram. That's where I will post all the guest information for the fun table and any kind of live streams that I have coming up, and other just general things. Like tomorrow I'll be at an in-person event, and Thursday I'll be at an in-person event, and Friday I'll be at an in-person event. So I tend to like to use that platform because it seems to be more content friendly than some of the other platforms that are just kind of all over the place. But that's what I have coming up. There is one other one that I'm trying to work out with a really talented artist in the UK, but with the time zone difference and with, again, everything that I have going on, I don't know where we're going to be able to do this. It have to be like a weekend type of thing. But again, follow me on Instagram and you'll find out exactly if I actually manage to get that together. If this is the first time, if you're joining me on my YouTube channel, if you could do me a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and also the notification bell, that helps me out a lot. And if you're on the Twitch side of things, if you could follow me over there, I also appreciate that. I almost added a 3rd one, but that was from yesterday. I typically stream on those 2 platforms. No, not the 3rd one that I did yesterday, but I did it just for kind of shits and giggles. So yeah, hopefully everyone, if you're here in the U.S., that you had a nice holiday weekend. And this week, at least for me, I do have a Muggle job, as most people know. It's been really hard getting back into the swing of things, especially when I'm so busy when I'm not at my Muggle job. But I love doing this, and it's kind of crazy for me to think that this is live stream number 303 since May 22nd, 2020, when I started all this. And I've said this many, many times on my live streams that I love when guests come back. partially just so I can kind of see what they're doing. I want to help promote what they have going on. But two, it kind of tells me that I must have done something right. Not to pat myself on the shoulders, but it just means that, I mean, no one in the right mind would come back and talk to somebody, or even like go to a restaurant or somewhere else where you were treated poorly or disrespectful, or just kind of someone was creepy to you or whatever. So I really enjoy when people come back and take the time to talk with me. And tonight's no exception. So let's start with the introduction. My guest today first joined me back in February of 2021. I had to look that up, and so that's a year and 9 months. Good grief. She is a talented music artist. She just released a brand new EP called Magic in the Tragic. Please welcome back to the Eclectic Arts Media Virtual Studio, Miss Juliet Hawkins.
Hello.
Hi, Juliet. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me back, Mark.
Absolutely. No, thank you again for taking the time. I'm looking forward to getting a chance to catch up with you and see what you've been up to, and we'll talk about Magic and the Tragic and everything else. So, yeah, how is life for you right now?
It's good. 303 is really special. 3 is my sacred number, so good vibes.
Oh, what? It just worked. It just worked out that way.
Life's been good. I have moved out to Long Beach after 3 years in Nashville. I was really ready for a change. New audience, new adventures, new landscape, new city. So it was time.
Okay, and how's the weather down there right now?
It's winter, which is cute to me because growing up in Massachusetts, this isn't exactly winter to me, but it's nice. It's sunny almost every day, 60s, 70s.
Okay, yeah, that sounds nice compared to what we have up here right now. I think it's like 32, 34, something like that right now. And like I was telling you pre-show that, yeah, that's why like the weather can't decide if it's going to snow or if it's going to rain or be a mix of both. Or
totally.
Yeah, just so bizarre. But yeah, no, that's great. Yeah, again, it's such a trip for me to think about where my head was when I first interviewed you, because you're in Nashville, I was here. You were able to play shows. I couldn't even go out. There was no shows here yet. That's how far back this goes.
Nashville also never really took the pandemic that seriously, unlike a lot of other cities. So I was lucky enough to not only catch the tailwind of when it was really booming, but also be able to play through the pandemic pretty much.
Yeah, that's why for me, again, when I found out when we did that interview, I'm like, God, so look at all the things I've been able to do, since then, and again, being back in person and what those experiences were like. Because that was, for me, I purposely waited until around October of 2021 before I actually went back to anything live, theater, musical, concerts, any of that kind of stuff from my media outlet. And it was it's so interesting because the very first thing was a play that I went back to, and I was sitting there waiting for the show to start, and it dawned on me that the last time I was sitting in this theater was like 2 years ago. And then I started thinking, look at all the stuff that's happened between them, because I was doing all these live streams. I met so many people from literally around the world because of this medium. And then it just kind of hit me like, man, yeah, look what this freaking thing did to everybody.
Totally.
All these things that were taken away, and now they're back. And now I've got, luckily, I mean, in a weird, silver lining kind of way, ended up with both of these things. Now I have live streams as a wonderful tool. I have in-person things back in my life. So I have both worlds kind of going.
Yeah, I think that it was almost kind of a gift and a curse that, like you said, the silver lining or the magic and the tragic, because it allowed people to reassess what was really important, and also kind of fine tune their craft if they were able to dive into that solitude and that space. Because I remember writing the EP that we last talked about in 2021. I wrote up in the woods, in the woods of New Hampshire. So it was like, if you were able to kind of utilize that time and dive into yourself and into your art, it could have been a profound time for a lot of people. And to appreciate what we lost and like be more grateful now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I know for myself that my interviewing skills increased tenfold because I was doing so many interviews, prior to the pandemic, doing them in person. I was doing some, but it was nowhere near, the 303 or whatever in 2 years or whatever it's been. And Yeah, it made me absolutely appreciate things. I think a lot of other people out there are the same way. That's why there's more people showing up, tours are selling out. There's other side issues that have happened that we have no control over, like with diesel costs and fuel, tour buses and things that aren't available for like some of these bands that are trying to get around. But I mean, I was just at a show that it sold out weeks in advance, and it's like, wow, this is awesome that people are trying to get out there because they realize it may not be there tomorrow.
Right. You don't know what you have till it's gone.
Yeah, and like we all kind of know that, but then when the pandemic hits, like now you really know it.
Yes.
If you didn't learn anything from that, then there's really no help for you.
Totally.
Oh my gosh. One thing I really liked during the time that we've had between these interviews is that you've been working on music, you've been putting out singles, and then you've been playing. It seemed like quite a lot. I mean, I was keeping up with you on social media, so I see different gigs and different things that you were doing. So was it been kind of a steady amount of work that you were doing, or was it kind of more in pockets?
Honestly, it was pretty steady. I had a series of gigs at this little bar called Fat Cat Slim's in Nashville, and then I got a different guitar player and started playing more original shows. Strictly kind of made the leap of faith into I only want to play ticketed shows or only shows where I can really focus on my original stuff. I started to get kind of in a rut there for a while, but I was like, this isn't why I moved to Nashville. And all the respect goes out to the people who are on Broadway or are playing 3 to 4 hour cover sets, but that's really not why I went there. So to be able to fine tune and refocus and pivot into strictly original was a blessing. And then as things progressed, to get back to playing solo was really special. Because I got spoiled with some really amazing musicians and guitar players that I was able to just kind of dance and do my thing and focus on singing the stuff I wrote. But to get back to playing it and in more of an intimate vibe, I played a show up in Studio City outside of LA, and then I had one when I returned to Nashville for a few months at the Bowery Vault where it was solo, and it was funny, like to feel nervous. To be out of my comfort zone is actually really healthy for me. Knocks my ego down a little bit so that I can, like feel what I'm saying and remember the words that I wrote.
That's really fascinating. And it makes perfect sense to me. I just never thought about it that way. That if you're going on stage and you're playing with some tremendous musicians around you, and then when it became just you solo doing things, that it stripped it down to like, yeah, this is like the core of what you started with. So
Totally.
you're really putting yourself out there. There's nothing to like lean back on. It's just you.
Exactly. Yeah, I would if I missed a line or I'd do this thing where it was like, I'll bring it back around the chorus again, and I could just kind of be floating around. But to be empower myself to pick up the guitar again, it reminded me why I started.
Okay, and please remind me, do you write all of your songs using the guitar?
For the most part, yeah. One of the actually Magic and the Tragic I wrote on the keyboard, and so occasionally if I get to sit down at a piano and I start fiddling with a melody, lyrics will come that way. But for the most part, it's just me and my guitar. Okay,
and then when you started working on doing solo shows again that you mentioned, how hard was it to not only just like mentally get into that state to play shows just by yourself, but also being able to sing and play guitar? Was it kind of pretty seamless? Or was it like, I had to kind of work on getting the rust off of actually performing, not just writing songs, in your apartment?
The latter, definitely the latter, because when I started working with guitar players down there, they would take chords that I didn't even know what they were. If I was putting my finger on strings that I was like, this sounds good, but I didn't know what the note was because I'm self-taught on guitar. So I had to relearn my songs with the correct chords. So yeah, it was challenging. And my friend Jimmy actually helped me write charts, rewrite charts, because I was like, wait, what is that chord? That was just a mumble jumble of my fingers on different strings, but that's an actual chord, or, so it was tricky.
Okay, yes. See, I would be in a similar boat that I took lessons, but for the most part, I don't remember much about my lessons. I'm pretty much a self-taught guitar player. And so yeah, if somebody else was actually playing or coming up with guitar parts and I was singing over it, and they're like a proper guitarist, they could be doing chords and things. I'm like, what the hell is that? Because I'm playing something close to it, but it's not exactly what you're doing.
Totally.
And, yeah, can you please show me, because it doesn't sound right to my ear when I try to do it.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, God, it reminded me of what a shitty guitar player that I am. But that also to like focus on that I'm a writer, that I'm a vocalist, that I don't need to be this all-star shredder, that's never what I was. And that the beauty of being self-taught is that you kind of find your own rhythm, you find your own style. And so it brought it back to kind of a wholesome place of me really honing in and loving my own sound again.
That's very true, and that's one thing I think that for a short period of time I was teaching guitar and guitar lessons and stuff to young people, and trying to explain to them that some people want to go the route of like knowing every note, every mode, everything that they're doing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But then some people want to just kind of explore and they want to experiment with things, and both are valid.
Totally.
So you can't like put down one over the other, because there's some school musicians I've been around that completely put down somebody that was self-taught, because they like point something out like a scale on the guitar. It's like, well, what is that? And it's like, you don't know. How come you don't know? It's like, yeah, but I just wrote this really great song with these chords, and let's see you write something that has emotion and feeling and meaning to it. And then, well, that's where they stumble, because they're completely clinical about what they do.
Totally. And it can become really, if it's too technical, where's the soul? You know, like I have a lot of respect for a lot of my classical guitar playing friends that are not classical, but trained, that have these amazing licks and these smooth like butter riffs. And I love that. But it doesn't have to, I think there's something raw and organic and sort of the fingerprint to the sound if it's not perfect. I've kind of embraced that with my voice too, is that I'm not classically trained vocalist, and that the cracks in my sound or where my voice might break, that's what actually gives me more of a sense of originality than being this like perfect, perfect singer.
Well, that's refreshing to hear, because for me, being the old man that I am, I like hearing people that, you know, you're going to hear a mistake when they play live. You're going to maybe not hear it. That's the big controversy right now about all these backing tracks that are being played with different types of bands. It's like, how many backing tracks should you have? And that's becoming almost like the norm, that if you see some big band that you just paid $100 for, even more, that's okay for them to have X amount of backing tracks. And it's like, well, yeah, if you don't have a choir, I understand that. Or if you don't have like some big keyboardy part or something, but your lead vocal should not have a backing track that you're singing to.
Amen. Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it honestly, like as artists, we want to like deliver the same product that people are hearing on the record. And that I want whoever's coming to my show to get what they've heard on Spotify or wherever. But I've sort of reshaped my thinking on that, because I'm like, what about a once in a lifetime, or not even once in a lifetime, just one of a kind, that is imperfect, but that's what makes it one of a kind. That it's more intimate, that it doesn't have to be this full sound, this like mechanical thing. Because I was struggling with playing with tracks too, because I'm like, what is this, karaoke on my own shit? Like, it's, you know what I mean? I wanted to be able to play something more intimate, and yet I didn't necessarily, or don't have a drummer with me or a sick bass line with me or whatever, but that's okay, that I can show the people where it started, which is just me and a guitar.
Yeah, and again, to me, that's refreshing, because I saw a band, gosh, this was probably like 5 years ago now, fucking pandemic. I can't remember exactly how far back things went, but they're old school, like a 70s rock band. I mean, they were up there, five piece or 6 piece, with wedge monitors, the whole bit, and they're plugged into their amps, and so it sounded like a freaking live band that actually, they took their time to wood shop and practice and get good. And then there's going to be some mistakes that were going on, but you could tell there's enough, it was breathing enough as a band and as a music and as a song during their concert that it sounded like this is what I came to see. I wanted to hear a live band just blow, basically, and not hear it. I don't want perfection from what I hear and see. I understand that artists are striving for that. They want to put out the best thing they can, but I don't need to hear, if there's 4 voices on the chorus, I don't need to hear 4. 2 are fine if it's just you and then a background person. I'd much rather have that.
Right. Well, and it's this weird, this like strange tug of war with wanting perfection, but also being an artist. If you want to be unique and original, that's not necessarily perfect. To embrace the sound as it is, and the uniqueness of who you are. I think that's what the world needs more than anything.
I agree, and you're right. That is that struggle for, I think, almost every artist of like, they're self-critical. I can always do better. How do I deliver the product, especially for musicians that like you were saying, that a fan heard this on Spotify or somewhere else, and then when I went to see her in the club, it didn't sound the same because one's a studio thing that could be done 100 times and fixed up and polished and all this other kind of thing. And then when you're up there, you basically have one shot, or you can restart the song, of course, but you maybe have 2 shots when it's live. But you get my meaning that this is how it sounded when I was writing. This is how I sound live, and you're going to hear some things, but that makes it uniquely me. I'm striving to do my very best. I'm not trying to have things that are all over the place. But well, and that kind of brings us to your EP with Magic and the Tragic, and kind of walk me through the timeline. Was this something where these songs were kind of coming together, like one here, then one here, then one here, or was it kind of like one just kind of writing, period of time where like you just kind of busted these out?
It was definitely kind of one here and then one here and one here in time. I went back to Nashville to put it out and to record it because I had a handful of songs that were really so telling of what a city and a style that's around you can influence, because it's a lot different than my last EP or some of my singles that are more edgy, sexy pop. This is a more mature sound for me, and a little bit more of an Americana feel, which I've never really been that into the at least new country. And I've never identified as an Americana artist, but these songs were a little bit more in that kind of folky vein. And I felt like it was necessary to put them together. And so they had those, the 3 on that 4-track EP were written all over the course of probably 6 months.
Okay. And what was the first one that you worked on?
God, I'd probably have to say Favorite Sin. I can remember sitting on my floor and picking the acoustic behind me with just the bass lines of that song, that kind of, and then when I recorded it, I asked my engineer, Pete, I'm like, hey, I got to get an upright bass for this. I know this needs an upright bass. And so we pulled in my friend Reese, and he like fit his giant upright barely into this little room. And but yeah, that was the first one I wrote. And then Country Girl kind of came together over the course of those few months, and I was reworking lyrics, and Magic and the Tragic was probably the most recent that I wrote on the piano, actually, when I was out in California.
Okay, and I have to say that Magic and the Tragic as a title, let alone a song, that's got to be one of the best things I've seen in a long time. Did that just come to you, or how did that title come to be?
It is one of the names of one of the songs, and it's obviously a line in the song, but I felt like it encompassed an artist journey, that you can find beauty in pain, you can find gold in the defeat, and the idea of magic and the tragic is that there's always something to gain, there's always something to learn, there's a takeaway, it may have left a scar, but it left you with a lesson, and something that your heart will never forget. or that your soul is absorbed that made that pain worth it.
Yeah, I mean, that for me, when I read that, I love, and I knew exactly what you're describing. That's what, for me, being a creative person myself, I was like, yeah, this is exactly why some of the best stuff comes out of some of the toughest times that we all go
100%.
through. I was just talking to my guest last night, who's an actress, about how she likes to journal. And I said, yeah, I used to journal all the time. And when I write music or whatever, when I'm feeling really shitty, I always remind myself, grab the guitar, grab my journal, because the best stuff gets captured then, instead of when I'm on top of the mountain and I'm, happy about everything or whatever.
It's a constant battle to I want to be a happy person, and I want to be a functioning member of society, and I want to be a good friend and a good daughter and a good sister and all of that. But I also find my best art, my best creations, my best thinking and writing, it comes when I'm in a darker place. That I embrace that duality of myself, that I am a sunny person. I like having a good time. I like making people happy and making people smile. And yet I oftentimes retreat to a more isolated place that I think a lot of artists can identify with, that is where the magic happens, is that when you're able to feel those things, and even if it hurts, to embrace it and wrap it into whatever you're molding.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, it'd be nice if I could come up with maybe the same type of creations when I'm in a sunny mood and just kind of feeling on top of the world. But yeah, there's some kind of aspect for a lot of artists where you start digging into that darker emotion, and this magic starts to come out of you then, and you have to capture it. And if you don't acknowledge it, boy, you're missing out on some really, really powerful stuff.
Totally. Yeah, it's easy to keep it surface, and oftentimes it's becomes sort of self-fulfilling to be like, oh, I'm just a sad person. But it's to get into it and to dig into it. I think that's where a lot of the healing comes from too, is to be able to bring light into the darkness and say, this is how I feel, this is who I am. And I think a lot of this EP for me was showing the world that it's not just this this blonde, sexy indie pop kind of vibe, that it's much more, that there's a real deepness and depth and a pain inside of myself that only in sharing it with other people am I able to truly accept it. And as artists, I think that's what we're supposed to do, to let people know it's okay to just be you.
Yeah, no, and I think anyone watching this right now, or anyone watching it down the road, that they can identify with that, because that's why people, certain music actors, athletes, whoever, certain things resonate with people. And especially I would say with musicians, that it could be something that you're going to going through a really, really tough time in your life, and this song is what helped get you through it. And so totally. you will always remember either that song, that artist, if you ever get a chance to see them live or meet them even, it'll bring you back to that time of like, man, I was going through the toughest time 20 years ago. And get me through it.
Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. And I think anyone out there can kind of relate to that type of thing. I know I can.
Same.
And it's trippy because I have such a random mind, as you might remember from 2 years ago. But I have an artist that, I was listening to her music, and she was with a band at the time from the Netherlands. And that music got me through about 2 weeks of some of the worst 2 weeks of my life. And then I got a chance to meet her in person, like right before the pandemic, or like 2018, 2019. And so just sitting there face to face with her, like 2 feet away, it was so hard for me not to like kind of want to almost like fanboy / have like a therapy session about like what her music had done for me. I did tell her once we were done with the interview off camera, that I tried to be as succinct as possible. I don't know what came out of my mouth, but she was so nice, so sweet, so understanding. And they have that whole thing, and I mentioned this last night with my other interview about, don't meet your heroes. But I've been really, really fortunate that when I've met them, they've been more than what I thought they would be. They're the other way. So it's like, oh yeah, I'm already a fan for life. Now you just made me like twice the fan for life. For
Totally.
Yeah, this life and the afterlife and whatever else. But that's the beautiful power of music. And when you cross that line and when you do expose yourself for people, make yourself vulnerable, yeah, people they'll see that, they'll hear it, and they'll connect with it and think, man, yeah, it's not just me. It's there's a bunch of other people going through the same thing, and here's Juliet writing the song, and it's almost like she wrote it for me. And
Totally. I think that's the point too, is like we get lost in this this like digital world in America and the American music industry, and our society just is so based on validation and numbers and likes and followers, and really like if you take all of that away and you get back to the point of why we do the things we do as artists, it's to heal, and in sharing it and making yourself vulnerable with the hope that even one person says, hey, I feel you. I feel what you're saying, that's all that I want to do, is really kind of try and access on a deeper level other people's feelings, and help misfits not feel so alone.
yeah, and I relate to the whole thing, and I can't remember if we talked about this the first time, but like the whole social media aspect of where things are at now, and there's times when I just want to like delete my accounts. I mean, I'll be honest, I'm just like,
Same.
I'm so over this stuff. But then with me having a media outlet, it's like, well, how are people going to know that I'm doing this interview with Juliet Hawkins? Well, I need to let them know somehow.
Yeah, I know. I feel that way too. That if I wasn't a musician or an artist, that I would probably just go rogue and live in a cabin with my dog and a bunch of weed. But that like to use the technology in the way that like what you're doing, to showcase other people and to connect with other artists and to get people's stuff out there and support each other is really the beauty of technology, I think.
You're right, and yeah, that aspect, and we talked about this pre-show. I'm so grateful for that. These live streams and this whole thing happened, and I'm not a tech-oriented person, so thank you, Alice. Well, you can barely see it. They will always be on my wall because they're the ones that did the virtual tour that invited me to open up during the pandemic. So had they not taken a chance on me, you and I probably wouldn't be talking like this, because it was the furthest thing from my mind. And at that time, I only had my phone. I didn't have this thing or my other thing over here. So I even asking their guitarist, who was the tech guy, like, I only have a phone, Scott. Is that going to work to do this live stream thing? How does this work? And he's like, what kind of phone do you have, Mark? And I said, well, it's the iPhone, whatever. And he's like, oh, yeah, that should work. We can do a test with it and everything. And they're down in LA, and I'm up here. And I just didn't understand like how this was going to work. And then, is this going to be live? He said, yeah, it's going to be live. You're going to go live for 30 minutes. And I'm like, 30 minutes? That's a long time to talk to somebody.
Well, you seem like a pro. I really like the lights too. So also thanks, Al, for helping get this off the ground.
Oh yeah, I appreciate that. And the very first live stream I ever did is on my YouTube channel. So anyone out there, you can go watch it and see how horrible I was. and Alice had 4 of their best like artist friends who are dancers and actors and stuff that have been in a lot of their music videos. Those were my guests that they picked. And so I'm like, I don't even know these people. There's 4 of them. I don't know how this technology works. I mean, I was a nervous wreck doing that live stream. I've actually talked about this a couple of times before, that I was literally sweating. I was trying to wipe sweat off my head before I started. And you know this, that pre-show, like when the guests come on, I always talk to them. I didn't say anything to them. I mean, I was so trying to make sure I remember I wrote everything down, what I'm supposed to say, what I'm supposed to do. And I'm like, I felt so bad afterwards, like, man, why didn't you at least say hello and kind of how are you doing? Nice to meet you. And I just didn't understand this format. It was so bizarre to me. And I just didn't want to F things up.
I get it. I mean, I'm still figuring out a Dropbox. Like when I put up my last single, Hot Damn, I actually I didn't cut it right. This was the first time I had done it myself without my engineer helping, and I didn't cut the strip right. So if you listen to the song, there's silence for like 12 seconds after the song's done. And because I like you learn by trial and error. So I think you're doing a great job. 303 strong.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. And it just goes to show, like we were talking, that there's going to be imperfections, and you're trying to, make things better. You go back and you work on your craft. And I've definitely it's kind of interesting to look through the live streams over the last 2.5 years and kind of see like, yeah, where I started. And then like a year later, it's like, oh yeah, look, the backgrounds look better. Oh, you can see my face now. There's better light on me. Things that you kind of learn. And watching other people's stuff on YouTube, I definitely did that to kind of say, well, how come they look good and I don't? What am I doing wrong here?
Yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah, and I do like to learn. I've always been a curious person, so it does help me. And there's some part of me that definitely drives me that way. Like I want to do better always with what I do. I don't want to just be complacent and stagnant. Like, well, I think I've kind of done good enough with my live streams now. It's like, no, there's always something I can do better with it. So, and not just the tech part of it, but also just how I do my interviews with the guests that I'm talking to, and like how much do I ramble, how much do I not? It just kind of depends.
Totally.
So this band Alice interviewed me back in June. So they turned the tables, and there's 6 of them, and that's
cool.
Also yeah. So I use the example that back when I started with them, I had like 3 pages of notes for every live stream that I did. I mean, I wrote down everything just in case I had a brain fart. Mark, just read what you wrote. That's all you have to do. But now it's gotten to a point where like I can show you this, that it just has the introduction that I read before I had you join me. It's got some stuff up here, some tech stuff. That's it. There's nothing. There's no questions. That's all in my head.
That's cool though, because you're letting it flow naturally and organically. Like that is I think that we miss too, even in our society with dating apps. That it's just this mechanical swipe, like versus you run into someone in a grocery store and you let the natural, organic vibes take place, like to not pre-plan too much. And I get in trouble with that because I'm like, I'll just wing it when I definitely shouldn't wing something. But I think that it's also cool because it allows for the human to come through.
Well, that's what I've kind of learned. I've also been someone that once I kind of felt comfortable with this format, then it became something of like, well, let's kind of make some challenges for yourself. So you think you're pretty good, Mark? Well, why don't you try doing the next one with no questions written down? You know, after I still do the same amount of research. I listen to your EP. I've been going through other songs and that kind of stuff and kind of do refreshers, but I don't have anything written. So it's like, well, that means I have to trust my memory, which is not necessarily the best thing to do. But I like that challenge of like, well, let's see what you got. And that's another way for me to help. But you're right. I do like that it helps the conversation flow better instead of me saying, Juliet, here's question number 1. It's like, well, come on. I mean, who wants to do that?
Especially as an artist, you really can't, like, we call it having ADD or that we go off on tangents, but it's having an artist mind. Things flow. If you try and keep it in this regimented question by question by question, it won't allow for that kind of breadth of conversation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I've also been judging it by the guests I've had on, and they will give me the feedback. So, Mark, I love this interview. They'll tell their publicist, they'll tell whoever, and said, I'll definitely come back with Mark. And I'm like, well, okay, that means this style seems to be working with people when it's conversational. And it's like, okay, because otherwise, if people are like, oh, he was terrible, and don't ever work with that guy, then I'm like, oh, maybe I better be more regimental and write questions down or whatever I need to do in my life. That's another thing. And being an independent artist yourself, and with what I do, I'm my own boss, so I can decide who am I talking to, who am I not talking to, what format am I doing this in. There's not some editor saying, Mark, you need to go interview these 10 people, and I'm like, well, I don't like 2 of them, but what do you need to do it anyway? I was like, well, no, there's anyone that's on my YouTube channel or anything that I promote, I had some sort of interest in, and that's minimally all the way over to like Uber fanboy. So there's something in between. There's nothing that's like someone making me talk to you or talk to whoever's coming up, next week.
So what you're saying is you genuinely like me.
That's my long-winded way of saying I genuinely like you.
Hear that, Mom and Dad?
You and your work. I would not have put that comment on social media about, hey, why don't we do an interview to talk about your EP, a few weeks back or last month, had I not meant it. Because no, I liked what we did the first time. I like what I've been hearing in between that interview to this one, and then when I listened to the EP, I'm like, yeah, look at this. I don't call it growth. It's like you were saying, it's a different direction, and there's growth within that direction. Don't get me wrong, but when I was listening to it over here in this chair, I was kind of like, is this the same person that I that I interviewed, because I don't remember the music sounding like this, and I like all kinds of music, so that didn't bother me one bit. But I had to go back and listen to it a couple more times to kind of live with your music now, and make sure that I'm kind of really taking everything in and not just doing a quick pass through it, because it's not that kind of music.
Yeah, thank you. That means a lot to hear, because I can tell myself in the mirror all I want that I'm growing or expanding or evolving as an artist, but to have another artist and someone who's seen me since towards the beginning of my Nashville journey, see the change and the shift, means I'm taking it as I'm doing something right, because I can hear the difference. And I really wanted to, with this EP, also be Pete never really overproduced my stuff, but I wanted to get out of the though I'm a feminist and that I embrace my sexuality, I wanted to get out of that for a little, and dive a little deeper, and strip back some of the production and take it in a slightly different direction.
Yeah, and for me, I think that's why, like, you can hear like every nuance of your voice in these songs, and I mean, almost like you're in the room. And I wasn't listening with headphones; I was listening through my thing over here, and that's what kind of threw me for a second. It's like, whoa, wait a minute, let me go back and listen to this again, because this was not what I thought I was going to necessarily hear, because I remember the other music, like, yeah, it's more produced, it's more kind of poppy, and the melodies kind of go a certain way. And this is more like, well, there's some serious stuff going on in here, and I need to kind of listen to it. So yeah, no, the growth is there, and everything you're hearing in your head or thinking that's going on, at least to me, it's coming through in the music.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate that, Mark.
Yeah. And even though we were talking about earlier that you got to a point where you're doing solo shows and you wanted to focus on your own original material, this EP has a cover song.
It does, yeah.
Yeah. And why did you pick this particular tune?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me that, and I was like in my kitchen trying to think of an answer. And honestly, I've loved that song for a long time, since I heard it in Ghost. And I think the longingness of, I chose Trouble by Cage the Elephant on my last EP. And so I had 3 originals and a cover. And so I decided to do that this time. And I was actually going to do, a song, an Elvis song. And I decided to go with this one because it was just more, it was kind of ballady, and it felt like it fit the vibe. And I haven't heard a woman cover it. So it just kept coming up for me. And I was actually finishing recording Country Girl at Pete's, and I said, "Hey, have you ever heard Unchained Melody?" And he was like, I don't think so. And so I'm in the studio room, and I hold up the mic my phone to the mic so he can hear it. And he's a classically trained jazz pianist. And so he just started playing it. And he's like, "Oh, I think I have heard this song." And he started playing it, and I was like, "Let's record it just to have it." And it was such a vibe to me that I was like, "Fuck it, I'm going to put on the EP."
Well, one thing I can say, and you already mentioned it, was that it totally fits with those songs, your originals. And I like the fact, and now you think about it, that you mentioned, I don't think I have heard a female artist or an artist that identifies as female cover that particular tune. I've definitely heard other versions of it, but now I think about it, I think they've all been male. And I also like that it's still uniquely you. You didn't try to mimic the Righteous Brothers or do certain, it's like not multi-layered and all that kind of thing. That's still you singing raw, but it's still definitely the tune. I mean, as soon as you hear it, you're gonna most people I think would know what this song is when they hear it. But yeah, I'm just kind of curious, like me with my random mind. Do you know what Elvis song you're contemplating?
I was gonna do "If I Can Dream."
Okay.
Do you know that one?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, but I had seen right before I recorded it, I saw a band had just put out a cover of it. And I was like, someone had the same idea that I did, that it's just such an epic song and such an emotional, relevant message about human connection and what's going on in our world and how we can there must be somewhere in some other dimension, birds flying higher, and like it's such a good song that I really wanted to put that one on there, but this one just felt more classic.
Okay, yeah, no, I mean, some of my earliest memories in my parents' house. I mean, my mom was a big Elvis fan, saw him I think more than once live. So I remember just hearing different, obviously like the pop, popular type of things, but also the other ones that have much more, to me, much more meaning going on with his work. And that's where I heard the Beatles and heard Motown and heard all that kind of stuff. And little did I know that was going to end up being a partial of a foundation for me as a musician, as a person growing up. And even like when I had my little duo that we were doing stuff for fun, I was doing Teddy Bear. I remember. I was like, what song am I going to do? I said, one of the earliest songs I remember of Elvis was that one. So I said, well, I might as well sing that one then. So let's just kind of do that. And I'm sure I butchered it, but it was fun. So I was like, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's got to be, there's, I know what tours or did tour at some point. So I've been covering a lot of musicals and all that kind of thing. And I was doing that before the pandemic too. But there's one called $1 Million Quartet. So it's about that one night with Carl Perkins and Elvis and Johnny Cash and oh crap, there's just four of them. But here it actually started at the Village Theater in one of their developmental workshops here in the Seattle area. And then it went from there to a touring thing. And I think it even was on maybe off Broadway for a bit or something, but it tells the whole story of that one night of those four giants at Sun Studios or wherever, and just doing this whole music thing. And at least here, the actors that they get, they actually all play and sing. So when they're playing the guitar, they're actually playing the guitar stuff. There's nothing mimicked in someone off stage playing or below the stage or whatever. It's actually them.
That's cool.
Yeah, so I just like, because somebody asked me, it's like, why is that so good to me? I was like, because that's the stuff I remember my mom listening to, and my dad too to a certain extent. And then, yeah, it just kind of got tattooed, into my psyche. And really nothing better to be tattooed by, in my opinion, in terms of my foundation. So, yeah. And I'm kind of also curious about with your original song, with kind of jumping all over the place with Country Girl. What was the inspiration for that song?
I think that a lot of people, when I would tell them I'm living in Nashville, they're like, but it's so much country, and there's really like so much more going on there besides that. But that I also wanted to do a little tongue in cheek. It's sort of, I don't know if it's ironic, but it's a country rhythm that song's in. So it was supposed to be just kind of a little clever, and also to bring it back to the message that I've always kind of had is be you. Don't be afraid to be yourself. Love yourself. Don't fit the mold. You don't need to. I never felt the need, though, again, with all respect to my friends and previous band members that play down on Broadway, I never wanted to be that person. I really wanted to do my own thing and have my own Juliet Hawkins stamp on my sound and not conform to this either mainstream or what a lot of other people are doing. So that was kind of, it was sort of the catchiness of, oh, I'm in the South, there's a lot of country down here, but that's not what I am.
Okay, well that makes sense, and I think that's also why, like, sometimes when you have so I've got definitely a heavy metal background, and with some of the more newer metal bands, that you have like one person who's like the founder, creator, writes all the songs, and then they hire these people that have become part of the band. At some point, those people in the band, they're artists too, so they want to contribute or they want to help write songs, and that founder might say, well, no, I'm the musical wellspring, that's why we sound the way we sound, so you're a great live performer, you just play live, and maybe I'll let you record some tracks on here, but you're not going to write on it. And that's where the rub comes, because it's like, well, wait a minute, I don't want to just be doing your stuff all the time, and I want to express myself too. And that's when things fracture. I'm thinking about one band in particular where 3 of the band members left because over that very reason. It's like, we've been in the band for 10 years and we can't write with you, so why are we even here?
Right.
And we don't want to just be this unless we're contributing to it in a real distinct way with the actual writing of these songs, and not singing someone else's material or playing somebody else's material. For 10 years, I can't imagine doing that. no matter what the paycheck is.
Totally.
Wow. So as you're kind of talking about how as you left your journey in Nashville and you're over here on the West Coast, Best Coast, and doing things down in Long Beach, do you feel that I think I already know the answer to this, but do you feel that being down there is going to influence the next batch of songs that you write?
Totally. I think that as much as I vow to stay true to myself and to not fit the mold, you can't help how an environment influences your sound, and what I would say even more so inspires your sound. Being in that Clapton and Cream tribute, Strange Crew in San Diego before I moved to Nashville influenced the way that I belt, the way that I use my voice. It influenced my stage presence. It brought a gritty, edgy rock to my sound that I didn't have before. As Nashville brought a almost folky, almost country Americana sound, that I think being out here, I do love that in Long Beach there's a pretty eclectic, versatile open music scene that I'm sure that working with new people and being in this area and getting to hear other people play, that there will be influences that sort of get absorbed into my sound. So I'm excited for that. And I think it's really good for me to be out of my comfort zone. And it's not like I'm starting over. Nashville really made me the musician that I am today. But to be able to say, okay, I'm ready for the next step. I spent 3 years there, and I kind of outgrew the city. I need somewhere that's a little more progressive, a little more open-minded, eclectic, and I feel like Long Beach, LA is that for me now. That Nashville almost prepared me for the next step.
Okay, yeah, no, and again, like I think I already knew what the answer was going to be, and it makes perfect sense that even if you're like, I think most musicians say, if I listen to a steady diet of a certain style of music, it will influence what I start playing even myself. If I listen to a bunch of funk for a week, I'm going to start starting pretty funky on the guitar. Just that kind
Absolutely.
of happens.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're like you're saying, you're going to meet new artists and musicians in that area, and if they're coming from different styles, that's going to start affecting what you start singing like or what you start writing like, and
Absolutely.
That's part of the part of the fun of like what's coming next, how things are going to evolve now.
I'm excited for it. Yeah, there's everything from reggae to blues to funk to electronic out here, and so whoever I'm blessed with enough to be walking in the same path as, I anticipate that that's going to be kind of what's happened for me in the past, where I start to absorb some new sounds and continue to evolve as I'd like to.
Yeah, for sure. And I see also when I was talking about $1 Million Quartet, the fourth person was Jerry Lee Lewis.
There you go.
Yeah, and thanks, Mom. To my mom put that in the chat because she was at that show and she watches almost all of my live streams. So yeah, thanks, Mom. I forgot.
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah. Is there, beyond music, is there anything else that you've been trying to like delve into? Are you writing or painting or anything else artistic, or cooking or designing?
I've gotten back into painting. That's been visual. I think as artists, we can sometimes pigeonhole ourselves and be like, "Oh, I'm not a visual artist. I'm a singer. Or I'm not a guitar player. I'm a writer." You know what I mean? It's like, but to come from a place of abundance and be like, "Why not?" So I use acrylic paints and getting back into painting, and I actually have been exploring writing screenplays. I'd really like to. I sometimes feel trapped in song format, that I can't dive enough into a character, and that I'd like to explore. I've only been in Long Beach a week, but I'd like to explore some surrounding areas for short story and screenplay writing, because I think that I can go so deep into characters that it's almost like a 3-4 minute song doesn't have enough time for me to really explore those different creatures living in the attic of my mind. So yeah, that's been on my plate as something I want to take a bite of.
Oh, exciting. I mean, I started reviewing films in 2020 during the pandemic, and I've still been doing that, and that included a lot of virtual film festivals. I finally got to go back to one in person this year here in Seattle. Then of course I got COVID, so it got cut short. So then it became virtual again for me. But it's having a chance to interview a lot of directors, actors, producers, writers from literally all over the world. It's been fascinating understanding the process and how they come up with things. I don't have that background whatsoever. I just am a fan of film, and so I remember. I didn't interview him. I'd love to interview him, but Taylor Sheridan, who's creator of Yellowstone and a bunch of other films and TV shows, he's like the hot commodity right now. He had talked about that when he first pitched the idea of Yellowstone to Kevin Costner. He said, how do you feel about making a 10-hour movie? And Costner's like, what are you talking about? There's no way the studios are going to allow it. It's like, I want to do a TV show. It's like, oh, okay, but we're going to shoot it like a film, because then we can really dive into those characters. We're going to use the same type of cameras, all that kind of thing. And I think it was, if I remember right, it was either Showtime or HBO when he first pitched it said no to it, and then Paramount when he said yes, and now it's this huge fucking hit. 16 million viewers on the season 5 premiere 4 weeks ago, and he's kind of like, yeah. And then Paramount pushed all in on him. You can develop as many shows as you want, and we're gonna, just like the Taylor Sheridan universe. And
that's awesome.
It is, and he knew what he wanted to do, and it was very against the grain. It was very not what would be typical of someone who said, yeah, I've done all this acting, I've done all screenwriting, and even directing in film. I want to make a TV show, and I want to make it this way, and this is going to be about cowboys in Montana. So,
he doesn't fit the mold.
Yeah, exactly, he doesn't, and but now he's having the last laugh for sure.
Yeah, wow, that's I didn't know that about that because I haven't watched that show yet. But I lived in Jackson Hole for a little while, and so I've been wanting to check it out just because of I'm sure that part of it's shot there.
Yeah, they've been shooting between Montana, and then the early seasons they are also using Utah.
Oh, interesting. Cool.
Yeah, and then when the pandemic hit, almost all of it was shot in Montana. Just because it was easier keeping the crew in one spot in the bubble and all that kind of thing. And nowadays, to be honest with you, I don't know if they're back to using Utah or not. I know they just did some stuff in Texas for the show. I'm clearly a huge freaking nerd for that show.
It's all good.
But he's also done, for what you're talking about for screenwriting, I know he did the screenwriting for Sicario, which had I think he's had one sequel I know. And he wrote Hell or High Water with Jeff Bridges and Chris Pine.
I love Jeff Bridges.
I love that film, and he wrote the screenplay for. So he's definitely a writer first, and then everything else second. So
that's the same with me. I mean, I started with poetry. I barely graduated high school. If it wasn't for my creative writing teacher talking to my vice principal about a book of poetry I had put together, I probably wouldn't have been able to graduate because my math and my sciences were so poor. So it's like it started with poetry writing, and then I found my mom's guitar in the attic and started playing, and only had 2 strings. And I was like, oh, something feels right about it in my arms. I was 12. And so it's like it's all coming full circle now, because I'm thinking that this year I'd like to put out a book of poetry, and including a lot of the other stuff that I've written in the past. And you can self-publish on Amazon. Stuff like that makes it so easy for writers, and even to get with other people that are into writing screenplays or into writing scripts to, I can only imagine that it would enhance my songwriting to be able to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. It's just it's a different format of writing, and that you already know. And that's awesome that you plan to try to publish a book of poetry. And what I can also see is that, as we were talking about that, when you have the poems there, that you have some painting that you do to go with some of the poems, perhaps. Totally,
yeah. Like on one side might be something that's indicative of the feelings that the words are getting out there.
Yep.
Great idea, Mark. Wow. I might have to cut you a percentage.
I'll let you have that one for free.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's where my artistic random mind goes. I remember I was talking to, I think that was last year, I was interviewing Terry Nunn from Berlin, the band from the 80s, and she was doing a wine tour thing for like fans on a cruise, a music cruise, and I just kind of blurted out, well, since you're doing this one in the spring, you should do one in the fall, and then you can kind of bookend these things. It's like, she's like, you have a business mind, Mark. You have a business mind. I'm like, I have a random mind. If it's business oriented, great. I don't look at it that way, but
I don't know. I don't think it's random. I wouldn't even put that down, Mark. I would say that you're a really good active listener, which makes you a good interviewer, and maybe it helps having 303 on the books. But to be able to piece together, it's facilitating. It's really cool.
I appreciate that. I can be a bit too self-deprecating at times, and sometimes.
Well, and I really mean it, because nobody told me I had to have this interview either. This was all authentic connections.
So we have a two-way street.
Yeah, I love it. It's cool.
Awesome. So it sounds like you're in a really, really great spot with the move, with the new people that are going to be around you, just being around the right mentality, like you were saying about it just wasn't working for you, you kind of outgrew the town and the things that you're just kind of over it where you were at. And now you got this whole new thing to kind of explore, and it's already impacting your music. And then you're talking about screenwriting and poetry and painting and your dog.
Bernie wants to come say hi. Say hi, Bernie. Yeah, no, it's been really it's been cool to be able to, like, even just walking Bernie in the mornings. The last couple of days I've been going down streets that I haven't been down before, and I think that change can be scary for a lot of people, but for me it's creating space for new ideas and new art and new moments. And I do feel like I'm in a good place. I feel for the first time in a long time I'm able to really feel when someone says, what does your heart say? What does your gut say? I can feel it. I think that after, I don't know if it was just the 3-year mark of being in Nashville or what, but I was kind of looking through a window pane at my own existence, and wasn't operating from a place of intention. I was just sort of going through the motions. And so to be able to get out of my comfort zone and yet also be like, whoa, I feel things bubbling around me. And I feel like when you trust the universe and you take that leap of faith, oftentimes you're caught right in the hand you're supposed to be caught in.
Yeah, that's wonderful. I mean, that's I'm sorry, it was interesting. I could see part of Bernie's head over here at one point. So it's kind of like
I know he steals the show every time, so I leave it till the end of the interview.
But but you're right, and I remember from the first interview that you've been a lot of different places. You've lived a lot of different places. You've definitely been through a lot of things in your life, trials and tribulations, and they've all kind of been bringing you to different points. And who was talking? Not to keep going back to Yellowstone, but one of the actors on there, Mo Brings Plenty, who's a Lakota native, he was talking about how he was really getting frustrated before he got that role, because he's like, things aren't working for me. I'm not getting the acting things that I want. I don't know if it's because I'm Native American or what have you. He was ready to give up and just kind of go on to do whatever else to make a living. And then this opportunity came, and he was talking about how sometimes in life you think you're ready for something, but in reality you're not for whatever reason. And then maybe 3 years down the road you get it, and it's like, well, you know what? If I would have gotten that opportunity 3 years ago, I would have like half-assed that thing because I was so not ready for it. Even in my head, I thought I was. And he was like, look at what happened for me, that I had done so much work, and then I thought I was going to give up, and then this opportunity came, but I was ready for it then. And had I got it 2 years prior, I wasn't half the actor that I already was at that point. And now when he said that to me, it made me think, because everybody gets antsy. You want something to happen, you want something to be received a certain way, opportunities to happen, and like, how come this isn't happening quick enough? Or for me, how come they got the big opportunity and I didn't get it? It's like, you know what, your time will come. And
absolutely.
And yeah, him saying that just 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago in that interview really stuck with me, that kind of keep your perspective and kind of know that things that you're doing now are really building towards those things that you do want. You can't just say, oh, I have to have this now, because you actually may not be ready for it.
100%. And it's easy, I think, like whatever you believe in, to want to take things into your own hands and control things as the humans that we are, to be like, even if you're the most patient person in the world, you want things to happen at a certain way, but that I choose to live by the fact, or by the idea that the universe has a plan, and that you can work hard and you can refine your craft and you can continue to get better and continue to learn, and that oftentimes maybe it is right place, right time, but that things happen the way they're supposed to happen. And that I wouldn't be, if I hadn't gone to Nashville, I might not be ready for LA and Long Beach. I might, that things kind of unfold the way they're supposed to. I definitely believe that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And because I think about when I first started doing all this media stuff in 2011, that I had kind of lofty ideas. Oh, I would love to interview this person. I would love to interview that person. And now I think about it now, I'm like, if I had actually somehow gotten those opportunities, they would have been terrible interviews, because I hadn't really done much yet. I wasn't ready for that. But in my head, it's like, oh yeah, I think I can do this. There's a fine line there of like wanting to really push yourself and have high goals and work hard for things. But it's like, sometimes if you're being really unrealistic about it, it's like, yeah, I would have embarrassed myself doing those things then.
Well, it's the push and pull of the ego versus being open to like letting, because you're like, oh, I want to do that, and it's good to have high standards or high goals, but at the same time, if you widen the net and say what will be, it puts in your path what you're really supposed to have, and maybe prepares you for when those things come back around.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I know one of the other guests I talked about manifestation is real, something she was talking about, and what you put out is what comes back to you. But yeah, you have to be open enough to receive it. And if you have your things like this, instead of it being like this, it could be going right past you. You don't even know, because you're so focused on this little area here. It's like,
totally.
You got to let it come to you from all different angles. It's like, wow, this is a really great opportunity. I didn't even know I could do this, or that someone would want to talk to me about that. And yeah, I've learned so much from talking to all the guests that I've had, come my way, people that I've met in real life, which is, I'll be honest, it's kind of trippy to me. Some people started following me during the pandemic that were here local, and then once I got to go to concerts and cover the other stuff, like, hey Mark, and I'm like, look, I don't have a clue who this person is or why they know my name. It's like, oh, I saw some of your live streams, and I'm so and so, and they tell me their handle or whatever. And I still don't know who you are, but thanks for watching things. And,
that's awesome.
It's cool when they're cool, and most of them have been really cool. I've known there's been an odd one, but that's okay too. But Juliet, thank you so much for taking the time. It's so great catching up with you. And
thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah, your new EP again, Everybody Magic and the Tragic, is on all digital platforms. It looked like, from what I could tell, all your favorite ways to access it. And is there anything, before we say goodbye here, that you have physically that you can, is there a store or a shop or anything online where people can, for old schoolers like me, that can buy any kind of a sticker or a CD or a vinyl or any of that kind of thing going on yet?
I actually have to re-up my merch, and I gotta teach myself how to build a store. But I do have stickers. I do have hoodies and T-shirts. I'm kind of figuring out how to make the physical things accessible online. But for now, following my Spotify, checking me out on Instagram would be a great place to start. Stay tuned.
Okay, there you go, folks. Yeah, and subscribe to her YouTube channel. Do that as well. Again, it was such a pleasure, Julia, talking with you again. And let's stay in touch so that we don't do one 2 years from now. We do it a little sooner than that. Or maybe
I'd love that.
Maybe you'll find your way doing some shows up the West Coast, and you'll come up this way and we can meet in person.
I think that would be super cool for the the third time interview to be face to face. I've been wanting to check out Seattle. So everyone go follow Mark's page, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. It's that season. Happy holidays to you.
Yeah, happy holidays.
Yeah, and have a really good night down there.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye.